The session is Are Your Career Pathways Strategic? Upskilling and DE&I for Jobs in Demand, presented today by Dr. Deborah Volzer and Natasha DeJesus. Dr. Deborah Volzer is Senior Director for Wiley's Enterprise Learning Solutions. Her focus is to identify, engage, and secure innovative learning partners interested in closing the skills gap. Her efforts work collaboratively with industry and learning partners to identify and align models and solutions that increase learner success and streamline pathways of skills attainment. Natasha is Wiley's Beyond Director of Enterprise Learning Solutions Business Development. She helps business leaders break barriers that prevent employee mobility and limit access to skill attainment. Through their latest solution, they can help your organization further proof your talent pipeline by developing and retaining an agile, diverse, and resilient workforce. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Deborah and Natasha.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate that warm welcome. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to, as Matt mentioned, Are Your Career Pathways Strategic? Upskilling and DE&I for Jobs in Demand. I am Natasha DeJesus, Director of Enterprise Learning Solutions, as well as Global DE&I Board Member here at Wiley and co-chair of our Wiley Education Services DE&I Business Council. I'm joined by my colleague, Deb Volzer, Senior Director of State and Workforce Development for Wiley Education Services, as well as Sarah Callahan, our Director of Marketing. Deb, Sarah, and I collectively, focus our work on a workforce development and education benefits solution called Wiley Beyond, which helps to empower organizations to drive talent mobility through learning. So today, what joins us all together is to discuss the differences between a basic and advanced career pathing strategy, how to bring employee aspirations and employer needs into alignment. We'll look at which industries are on the rise and which jobs, skills, and experiences will be most in demand in the future. We'll also discuss why your strategy must include upskilling and DE&I to be successful. And we'll wrap up by talking about how to bring continuing education, diversity, and career pathing together. But before we dive into all of that great content for this webinar today, we know a lot of you are joining, and we thought it would be best to get an idea or an understanding of where you think your organization's challenges are around closing the skills gap, increasing diversity, and also increasing retention. So we wanted to use some of the features in our meeting today. So we'll use the hand raise feature for this part of our presentation, and we'll go through these one by one. So if, for the first one here, number one here, please raise your hand, use the feature to let us know if you think your organization has a skills gap. And I'll give you a second to do that. And we've got several hands raised.
This is Sarah. It looks like we've got maybe about a quarter of people raising their hand, but quite a few not raising your hand. That's interesting.
All right. So, and if you wouldn't mind, after each of these, if you wouldn't mind lowering your hand, and we'll go to the next one. So that was around skills gap. This one is around a diversity gap. So raise your hand if you think your organization has a diversity gap. Many more. All right, so it looks like maybe about 40% or so for the diversity gap. All right, go ahead and lower your hand. This last one here is raise your hand if you think your organization could do a much better job at retaining talent. All right, we're going up. So now we're at about 50%, which is, what we've suspected. And as kind of our research shows, many organizations and their leaders are really facing some of the similar challenges when it comes to the skills gaps, and also kind of increasing and improving diversity numbers within the organization. In fact, from our latest skills gap survey, we found that 87% of executives say they now face a skills gap or expect to have one within the next 5 years, and 99% of L&D leaders expect a negative impact with the skills gap if it isn't closed. So you all are kind of right in line with what we're finding. So this next piece, though, I want us to look and pivot and look within ourselves as HR leaders and as business leaders within the organization. Using this same feature, raise your hand if you feel like you've got a lot of balls in the air, like there's a lot on your plate, and maybe there's not enough resources to get things done. And that number is steadily increasing. Again, upwards of about 50% of participants, and it's still increasing. There's a lot, there's a lot going on, especially with everything that kind of the pandemic has brought in, and all the challenges that has had on our HR leaders and our our organizations. So lower your hands and let's take it to the next one. Raise your hand if I wish I could get ahead of hiring demands. So if you're a hiring leader for your organization, raise your hand if you wish that you could get ahead of hiring demands. All right, so we've got about 40% or so there. And then this last one, I promise this will be the last hand raise, but this will really help us, guide this conversation today too. So let us know if you wish that there was some ways to work smarter and not harder in your work. And if you're anything like me with this last one, you're raising both hands. You can probably see me here. All right, so much more. So again, we're at about 50% or so. So the problem is that organizations and HR leaders, have a lot on their plate. They're dealing with the reemerging war for talent that's happening, workforce and societal demands for systemic change, the pandemic. There's just so many things going on, and the world is really complexifying, and so are business demands. COVID brought on, this rapid shift for us to really embrace and look at technology in a different way. And it has propelled us to this next level with Industry 4.0. But these shifts that are going on, I mean that organizations need skills that they just don't have, while at the same time, trying to prioritize hiring more diverse talent. In that same skills gap survey that I referenced earlier, we found that 70% of respondents revealed that up to 500 jobs went unfilled at their company in the last year, with 50% blaming them on lack of qualified candidates. So as hiring leaders, you're putting time and effort into finding those right people to get the job done, but you still feel like you just could be working smarter and not harder. And today, that's kind of what we'll focus on, is how to do that. So I'll turn it over to Deb, and we'll go into how we should proceed forward.
Yes, and I know that only about 50% said that they would like to work smarter, not harder. I want to know from those other 50% how you're working so smart. We might want to learn from you. But what we're going to do today is really talk about what are the different ways in which we can get ahead of the skills gap, and really try to bring a new life and energy to our workplace. So we can go on to the next slide. So this one, the forest for the trees. I'm sure you are all familiar with this idiom of you can't see the forest for the trees. But I'm wondering, have you ever really sat down and thought about how it applies to us in the workplace? So this expression is defined or typically used when you think of someone who's too involved in the details of a problem to look at the situation as a whole. Or kind of put in another way, we sometimes can't see situations for what they really are while we're in the midst of them. So when Natasha talked about, having all the balls in the air and trying to get everything done, in short, if we lose our perspective, if we're too heavily focused in one particular approach or process, we're missing the forest for the trees. So I want to look at this through a hiring and diversity issue, through this lens of where we become solely focused on what's right in front of us, that we tend to keep our heads down and just get the job done that we need to do, and then kind of move on to the next challenge. And once we get that challenge completed, we forge ahead to solve the next. And we really aren't truly seeing the impact of our decisions. And even more kind of pointedly, we can't see the forest for what it is or what it could be. Meaning it could be a diverse set of trees. And when I think about those trees, I think about them as individuals who really could provide your organization with a better and richer skills solution if tapped. So what I'm proposing is that if we really continue with many of the current hiring and training practices that are in place, our outcomes are going to remain the same. We're all going to be struggling with that skills gap. So if we're just trying to focus on finding that person to fill the role, or just getting a warm body in place, which, really results in similar faces with similar skills, with similar backgrounds, and it really kind of prevents us from thinking about how we can build out the next generation of our workforce. So we will kind of continue with that head down approach, viewing only the trees right in front of you to make sure you get things done that need to be done, and you're not seeing a better way. And one could argue that this will result in a less future-proofed set of skills within your organization. And I think many of you are kind of seeing that now. And if you're struggling, like many of us, and I would say, in fact, if not most of us, many are finding a different approach that is providing a better way, and frankly, a much better view. So the question is, should we consider, so the question you should consider is, wouldn't it be satisfying to have a more comprehensive and future-focused plan? I would say that the answer should be yes. So let's look at it from a different view. Let's rise above the trees and look for the path, or create the paths that map out your entire ecosystem. In other words, by combining your talent strategy with your business strategy, finding a way to upskill and right skill within your organization by creating education and training pathways that specifically have DE&I in mind. So this could be the advanced future forward plan that you've been missing. So what would this mindset need to be? Focused on the future. What do you need to know, and what do you need to know? Sorry about that. What do you need now, and what do you need to know in your immediate future? Focus on a heads up approach. So thinking about how different business concerns interconnect, that allow for cross-training and upskilling opportunities and make them more transparent, which I believe might just be the solution that is the easier path to solving your multiple business problems. So what's the plan for this? I think you need to solve for innovation, skills, and diversity with career planning support by employer-sponsored education. That seems to be a really great way to increase your retention, make sure that you can solve for the right kind of skills gap within your organization. And I think it provides a different outcome. So this outcome is that it could be a forward future plan, that creating these innovative teams with comprehensive skills, with diverse sets of backgrounds that can bring new innovation, creativity, energy to your organization. And by doing so, I would encourage all of us to prioritize people of historically underrepresented groups within the business sector. So again, our focus really is, what is the What are you trying to do within your organization to build that talent that aligns with your business goals and needs? So I believe career pathing is the solution for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Natasha and let her give you a definition of what we mean by that.
Great, thank you. But first, before we get into the definition, I really want to get an understanding and of kind of where we are as a group today. And we'll pull up a quick poll here, 2 polls. The first is we want to know how many of you have a career pathing plan in place. And we'll give you a second to answer that. It's yes, no, or not sure. And this, if you want to, if you know, your organization has kind of outlined those career opportunities, employees have a general idea of how to advance, just let us know if you think that is in place. And the results are coming. Here we are. All right, wow. So we've got 23% of respondents saying yes, there is a career pathing plan in place. 57% say no, there isn't career pathing in place, and 21% unsure. So with my day-to-day role here, I talk with HR leaders, business leaders day in and day out, and this is typically the case. There's a desire to have career pathing in place for their workforce, but I'm also seeing this kind of same trend, is that it's just not there yet. But we'll talk to a little bit about kind of the importance of having it and how you can develop a career pathing plan that meets the needs of both your workforce as well as your business.
And Natasha, I would say interesting from this survey is that when you look at that, the not sure answer, when you think about that 21%, assuming that leadership isn't quite for sure if that's in place, imagine what it's like for the employee not being able to have access to a transparent plan to ensure that they retain within their organization. So
absolutely. And next, so for those of you who think that you do have the career pathing plan in place, how many of you consider your career pathing plan to be strategic, aligned with business goals? So the answers here are yes, no, not sure, or we don't have a plan. I'll give you a couple of seconds to get your responses in. Wow. All right. 63% of you all say you don't have a plan. 10% not sure. So as far as if you consider it to be strategic, if that career plan is strategic, 10% of you said yes, and 16% said no. So thank you all for coming in and joining us today, because hopefully, when we send follow-ups, 6 months from now, these numbers will be different, and you're able to use some of what you've learned today to bring back to your organization to create really strong strategic career paths. All right, so I want to jump right into kind of what does career pathing even mean. So let's go back to the basics here for a second. According to SHRM, career pathing encompasses varied forms of career progression, including the traditional vertical career ladders, dual career ladders, horizontal career lattices, career progression outside the organization, and on core careers. But, for us here, when we think about, career pathing, it's not only about helping employees grow into roles and professions that they love. It's about aligning your employees' career aspirations with your business goals. So that means knowing how in demand that role or profession will be as the time goes on. And, in order to really prepare your organization to become future ready today. When I think about this concept, I can recall a time in my own career when I thought I wanted to become a trainer. So this was very early on in my career. I felt like I had mastered the role of being a university admissions counselor. But, unfortunately at the time, there was no need for a trainer within the company. We already had one, and one was enough. But I really wanted to move into that position. And I expressed that to my leaders in the organization. The company did know that there would be, great value in having an admissions counselor move into more like of a senior level position. At that time, it was only you're either an admissions counselor or a manager of admissions counselors. So they created this career path for admissions counselors that as you advanced in your career, you would be able to train and onboard new admissions counselors, train and provide support on new technologies that were brought into the organization, as well as to continue to be, productive in your role. So there was a clearly defined track towards leadership as an admissions counselor. And what that, the reason why I bring that up in this conversation is because there is that middle ground that you could really find that shows, your employee that you value what they love and you're able to meet their needs and those aspirations, as well as kind of fulfill the needs of your business to help, achieve and accomplish the business goals that you have. So how do you, within your organization, implement strategic career pathing? And what do you need to know and to do to implement a comprehensive career pathing plan? Deb?
Sure. And one of the things, Natasha, you just brought up really great points from the SHRM research as well as your own experience. And I wanted to just add that, what we're seeing from our own research is there are really kind of three outcomes to providing that career pathing and that, really kind of transparent career pathing. And you touched on them, and I'll just highlight them again, that really employees feel more engaged when they believe that their employee is concerned about their growth and really provides opportunities for them to reach their career goals while also, fulfilling that company's mission. That's one of them, which was a great example of what you just said with your own personal life. And then that career development path provides employers with ongoing mechanisms to enhance their skills and knowledge, really, that leads to an opportunity for talent mobility or upward mobility within the organization. And then really, I think the one that I think is most impactful is it really has a profound impact on the entire organization as it increases morale, career satisfaction, motivation, productivity. We talked about that kind of at the beginning, and really a responsiveness in meeting departmental and organizational objectives. So to me, this is why it's really imperative that we look at a strategic career planning path. So there are several paths to keep in mind as you begin to develop your plan. So we can go on to the next slide. So the first is, who is your competition? When you think about this, it's not only are you needing to hire individuals in to have the right skills to fill the open positions within your organization, but you're competing with other industries for the same talent who have the same or closely related aligned skills to the skills that you're seeking. So I think this is really important to keep in mind as you look at your local, regional, and national talent pools and begin to lay out your recruitment and upskilling plan. The second part of that are, what are those in-demand skills and what are the roles that are most difficult to fill? And I think the question that needs to be asked is, if unfilled, what impact is that going to have on your business? So what are the skills that are absolutely imperative that you must find that are some of those also in-demand skills? And then the last one, who is the most desirable individual to hire within this? So, and it's not necessarily, when I think about hiring people with their life experience, it's individuals that have the aptitude or the life experiences that you seek from cultural and behavioral fit. And I think I could argue that sometimes having that cultural fit and that life experiency fit is valuable, and sometimes more valuable than many of the discrete skills that you can train within your organization. So I think about it from looking at this from not only what do you need to hire in that are those discrete skills, but also thinking about the longer term investment in your most valuable asset, and that being your people. So we can go on to the next slide. I think one of the things that Wiley does really well is we really look at things from from a research perspective. We like to look at data. Data helps us. Sorry, my screen is being weird. We really look at it from that data perspective of understanding what the trends are, what positions are most valuable to organizations across a wide spectrum of industry sectors. But what I think we most need to focus on are in what industries do we see a real rise in job opportunities. So we're going to focus on healthcare, finance and insurance, and manufacturing to start. So let's start with healthcare. So let's look at some data around healthcare. So we see that healthcare, obviously with our aging population, a 33% increase over the next 10 years in jobs in the healthcare sector. Some of those roles that we're looking at are the most in demand are home health aides, personal care aides, and medical assistants. That again kind of speaks to the growth and the aging of our population and the need to have that support in the healthcare sectors. Hard to fill jobs, we're still looking at nursing assistants, medical assistants, and medical secretaries. So what does this mean overall? And let's look at who the demographics are within these professions. So from an education attainment standpoint, some of the skills that they're looking for that are going to be the up and coming most in-demand skills are around cardiologist, emergency and intensive care, and medical support. Knowing that many of these can actually have just a high school or vocation training, about 40%, a little over 40% of those occupations require that type of training. This allows us to really think about how we recruit and encourage individuals to start out on this path, which may be just a short time of gaining that certification or vocational training or associate's degree to get into the profession. And then how do we build a career pathway to allow them to see that this is a long-term career investment, not only for the organization for which they work, but also for themselves, seeing themselves in roles as they move up within the organization. So let's look at, on the next slide, really who is considering these roles and who we have in the industry filling these roles at this time. What's sad to see is that it is predominantly, or maybe not surprising, is predominantly female, kind of what they would call pink collar jobs, where it's a lot of females that go into these. I think because it typically is around those caring and nurturing type of roles. We see only about 20% of males in this profession. And when you look at it from the kind of ethnic breakdown, we see smaller numbers of individuals that are of color pursuing these or who are in the market right now, and maybe because they don't see themselves as in the market or kind of holding these positions, we really are limited in our ability to recruit individuals of color into these occupations. But interestingly, I think because of this care and nurturing of these roles, what we can see in the next slide from a diversity perspective is that those with some type of disability find that this is a really great occupation for them. You can see that they actually have, in looking at it across the board, more individuals with disabilities are in the healthcare support occupations than in other industry sectors. So you ask yourself, why is this such an attraction for those with disabilities? I'm going to have Sarah just jump in just because she has a lot of background in this particular area. But what's really interesting, and I know, Sarah, you're going to touch on this, is the value that somebody with a disability brings to the table. They've had to overcome a lot of obstacles in their life. And I think that lends them to be quite creative, resourceful, and innovative individuals. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you speak to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I myself have a disability. I have epilepsy, so it's an invisible disability, as we say. And I've always been in marketing. So I've always been in kind of a white collar, working at a desk kind of job. And yet, to Deb's point, I've had to be creative because I've always worked in front of a computer, and I'm really photosensitive. If I sit in front of a computer all day, it triggers seizures for me. And so I get creative in terms of how I avoid that. And that's been really difficult in this last year when I'm not in office. And so I can't say, hey guys, let's go to the meeting room and have a meeting there. So I'm not sitting in front of a computer. And so with my team, we have team building exercises and things where we get on our phone or take our laptop and go outside, and things that I think as a marketing director, I think are fun for my team and help build team morale and all that, but are also just innovative and just helping me out in terms of a personal accommodation for myself. So a little bit selfish. But to Deb's point, I think when you have a disability, you just learn to be adaptable and creative in terms of how you accommodate. You hope that your employer is also as equally accommodating, if not more. And so that's why I think it's great to consider that and hire for that. Another example I've given before is the fact that when you're hiring, you often look for eye contact in an interview, and yet you're often putting people with a certain disability like autism at a disadvantage because they might not be as able or willing to make great eye contact. And yet you're missing out on a ton of great life experience and skills that they innately have. So with that, I just want to kind of get you thinking outside the box that, first of all, disability isn't always visible. And then there's a lot of just great innovation, creativity. You think about, with my experience with epilepsy, some of the most famous people throughout history, like Edgar Allan Poe and Van Gogh, Michelangelo, all had epilepsy because it kind of sparks creativity when your brain works a little bit differently. So just consider your hiring practices, your accommodation. And part of that might be why people choose healthcare, where those things are kind of thought through a little bit more. But if you make your company equally as accommodating and your hiring practices equally as accommodating, you're more likely to get a lot of those benefits of creativity and innovation, all of the great things that having a really diverse pool of candidates and workforce brings.
Thank you, Sarah. So we're going to shift now into finance and insurance. So again, this is one of the fastest growing occupations for the next 10 years. And all of this data comes from Burning Glass. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. But you can see that this is where technology and advancements in technology are really kind of making an impact in our workforce. So you've got software developers, engineers, banking branch managers, personal finance advisors. But interestingly, the hardest to fill jobs, when you think about it in the insurance and finance perspective, hardest to fill jobs are clinical case managers, nurse practitioners, home health aides. And, it's kind of funny, we're, having this right from after we were talking about healthcare. Interestingly, when you think about skill sets from other sectors that you can bring in to your own business and learn from their best practices, understand what they, for instance, with nurse practitioners in the insurance industry, those that have been practicing or practitioners can bring that value. They have a better, deeper understanding of approving different procedures or things within the insurance realm. So although they're not practicing practitioners anymore, they actually are bringing an incredible value to the company. I would also say that when you think about this, you might want to look outside of who you typically hire from other industries, because they have a unique and different perspective that they're bringing to the table. So let's go on and talk about this from an education standpoint. Different from what we see in healthcare, where you have lots of opportunities for frontline or easy stackable credentials to get started. Because this is in more heavily technical based with, software developers, engineers, you're going to see a higher need for those advanced degrees, or at least a baccalaureate and above. However, there still are pathways to bring individuals in to help them train and gain micro credentials or, discrete skills that can get someone on a path that you can take someone and build from within your organization who has the attributes, that cultural fit to your company. You can train them and educate them up within the organization. So let's look at this from the demographic standpoint. So this one is a little bit better from a distribution of male to female ratio. You can see it's, still skewed a little bit more to the female, but males are I think increasing in this sector all the time. Again, we're looking at that race breakdown, and we don't see a big move in the needle of changes in individuals of color with a different ethnic background that can bring a really unique perspective and set of cultural awareness to the table, understanding that many of these individuals, both with healthcare and with this industry, are going to be client facing or patient facing. And you need to have representation of who the culture is. We're changing as an overall demographic, which is wonderful and beautiful to see. And I think now it's our opportunity as companies to better reflect that amazing, dichotomy of individuals that are out there within our organizations, and giving them transparent pathways so that they can see themselves moving up in those roles. And then they see someone who looks like them in that role. And it just creates an amazing chain of events that follow. So we'll go on to the next one. Interestingly, this sector or industry sector really has the highest inclusiveness of the LGBTQ community, which again is amazing to see. And looking at their best practices, looking at why individuals who fit within this group tend to focus on these types of industry sectors, makes you wonder, what can I do differently in my hiring practices? What can I do different in my messaging to them when I'm looking for the right kind of individual to attract these highly qualified individuals to your organization, and then keep them and retain them. So let's move into manufacturing. So manufacturing with Industry 4.0 is really changing. Technology, when you think about kind of the shelf life of technology, it is really 2 to 4 years, and manufacturing is no exception to this. In fact, I think they've been the hardest hit with innovation. When you think about artificial intelligence, you think about cybersecurity, you think about robotics, all of these are really having a profound impact in the manufacturing space. And you're seeing that growth as a result of that. So they're up 16.8% above the national average. And continuing to grow again over the next 10 years. So they're looking for those software developers, those marketing managers, those mechanical engineers, and they're looking for those hard to fill jobs because other industries are also looking for database architects or logistics managers even. So we'll look at manufacturing. It has predominantly been focused on that. When you think about it over probably the last 20 years, if you had a high school diploma, or even if you didn't, manufacturing was kind of the job that you really focused on because it was a lifetime career and it paid a great living wage, but it was hard work. So you're seeing that shift now where really with the advancement of technology, the requirement for having those not only technical skills, but then the advanced skills in, the engineering, as I said, and robotics and artificial intelligence, they're tending to need to look for individuals with those baccalaureate degrees, master's degrees, and doctoral degrees. And it's not just as you move up into leadership, it really is. We need to have highly technically trained individuals who have great critical thinking skills, who have great problem solving skills, working in our manufacturing space. And again, this manufacturing space has gone from being that kind of everyone thinks of the dirty, dark, places with hard manual labor to those that are absolutely, clean, highly technical spaces. So this shift in the need for qualified workforce, I think has a huge opportunity ahead of it. So I want to look at that from the demographic perspective. It has predominantly been male focused in the manufacturing sector. What we're seeing is we need to look at hiring more women and individuals of color into this great career. So again, you can see actually they do a little bit better with kind of an ethnic breakdown, but not a whole lot better from an overall industry perspective. But to me, we can go on to the next slide. This is all about a shift in company culture, hiring in highly technical women into the field and people of color. I actually got to sit in, and they called them the Rosie Riveter. Actually, it was Boeing out of St. Louis, Missouri. They actually encouraged women to come in and get welding degrees because they needed them to come in and do rivets and welding for the airplane industry, both from the commercial and from the fighter. Kind of the, I would say the more, I can't think of the term, more the fighter planes side of the house. So it's really interesting to see the impact and the creativity of some of these companies that are going out and saying, this is a demographic who we know has great aptitude for the roles that we have. They're as effective, they're as productive as men in those roles. And we need to encourage and promote these great career opportunities within manufacturing. And that kind of ability to then bring in a new innovative group of individuals who maybe typically haven't been used to seeing each other in the workplace really does change the overall culture of an organization. So I'm going to turn it back over to Natasha. And you're on mute.
All right, so the future is innovative and inclusive, and your career pathing plan should reflect that. So what's the solution? It's strategic career pathing. So developing a strategic career pathing strategy will only help you fill current and future needs. It'll keep your company nimble, and it will also become a part of your employee value proposition, as it will truly show your employees that you're invested in them and you're invested in their future with the organization. Now we'll take a closer look at how to build a strategic career pathing plan, with first mapping career paths, then identifying skills gaps, and last building custom development pathways to upskill your workforce. I know we've got about 3 minutes left, so we'll rush through this really quickly for you.
We will do this really quick. So to me, we kind of talked about what those career mapping, the benefits of those. Really, it is kind of getting down to that discrete pathway. What are the skills required for entry into that position? Then looking at the next set of skills or clusters of skills that would propel that person into the next level of engagement within your organization. And by creating those stackable pathways, by looking at job progressions within your organization, allows you to put a plan in place, a transparent map, a road, that they can see where they need to go within the organization. Bottom line with this, the problem then becomes you can create the best and most transparent pathway for individuals, but if you don't know who's interested, it's meaningless. So what you also need to do is engage your employees, understand who has interest and intent to do the things that they love to do, but also to increase their skills and knowledge and abilities to see themselves in the next level of leadership within your organization. So
Great. All right, so I'm going to jump really quickly and tie all of this up together so you have a clear example of what we're talking about, how to do this, and how this could actually work for one of your employees or for your workforce. So let's take a quick look at Luis's story here. Here's a quick example. Education background, Luis has a high school diploma. He grew up in Colombia, so he could be relatable to foreign-born patients. Luis is also bilingual and can communicate to the growing Spanish-speaking population. He also has epilepsy, a hidden disability, which Sarah touched on earlier, which could make him particularly compassionate to his patients. He's a man, with healthcare, as we saw earlier, about 20% of healthcare professionals are men. So it's nice to have, a man on the team. But he wants to become a nurse, so that's his professional goal. But then his employer also has a goal to guide Luis through the most in-demand healthcare jobs that interest him. So let's take a look at how we align that education and learning to his career path. So Luis will go from a high school diploma where he's in a home health aide role, earning about $27,000 a year, to then pursuing an associate's degree. And this will give him, an associate's degree to become a cardiovascular technician, which would increase his income to about 59%. And then Luis's employer encourages him to go and funds also through his employee education tuition program, sponsors his BSN. And that will allow them to achieve, the goal of reducing that nursing shortage, to also helping Luis achieve that personal and professional goal that he had to become a nurse, which brings him up to a median income of $111,000. So the benefits here, just really quickly, are increased income for Luis, peace of mind, increased engagement and morale, a more equitable life for him, and also increased contributions to society in being a nurse for the industry. On the employer side, you've got increased ROI. Luis is future ready, prepared for that role and roles of the future. He's helped reduce turnover in that role, increase staff diversity, and also that employer is known for that corporate responsibility for investing in Luis's career and also his personal goals. So I'm going to wrap this up today, by just saying that strategic career pathing with backed by education is kind of the direction that we are encouraging you to go in. So aligning education with career pathways, it ensures you are proactive to industry demands, not reactive and behind the curve. It makes you in charge of the future and not subject to it. And most importantly, it aligns your talent strategy to your business strategy to make business impact and make impact and increase your bottom line. And with that, I know we are just about at time. So we want to thank you so much for your time and attention today. And on behalf of Deb, Sarah, and myself, we hope you enjoyed this webinar, and we'd be happy to answer the questions that you have put into the chat and that you may have. I know we're over time, so we may have to respond to those after this. but we'll be able to share this PowerPoint and answer those questions. Thanks, Matt. Thank you all.
Yeah, we are over time, unfortunately. There's so much information there, so I'm sure all our attendees appreciate all that. I just want to say thank you to Wiley, of course, and thank you to the three of you for the presentation today. Thanks to all of you, the attendees, for attending. Your feedback is important to us, so please take a moment to fill out the exit survey that will open on a new browser page on your computer. You have a few minutes before the next webcast begins, so you can visit the exhibit hall or grab a fresh cup of coffee, or whatever your beverage of choice may be. We'll be sending you an email with the credit information, and you will also find the credits on your View My Credits page of your membership profile once the webcast has been archived. This concludes the webcast session. We hope you've been enjoying Inspire 2021. All virtual booths are available for the entire event, as well as the networking lounge, so take some time to look around and connect. Have a great day, and thank you again to our wonderful presenters.